Hey guys, welcome back to our walkthrough of classic poetry. I've saved some of my favorite wintertime poems for the right setting. And as you can see, it's pretty snowy in the woods behind me, so thought it would be a good time to read some of my favorite winter poems. Now today I want to go over the poem called Good Hours, which is by Robert Frost. And it's not one of his most well-known poems, but it's really good, as you'll see, so it's definitely worth a read through. As always, it's written down below so you can follow along as I read aloud, but here's Good Hours. I had for my winter evening walk no one at all with whom to talk, but I had the cottages in a row up to their shining eyes in snow, and I thought I had the folk within. I had the sound of a violin. I had a glimpse through curtain laces of youthful forms and youthful faces. I had such company outward bound, I went till there were no cottages found. I turned and repented, but coming back, I saw no window but that was black. Over the snow my creaking feet disturbed the slumbering village street, like profanation, by your leave, at 10 o'clock of a winter eve. This is a really nice poem. You know, almost all of Robert Frost's famous poetry was just composed while he was out on walks. Now this poem is unusual because it's in a village scene, you know, he's walking through a town, whereas most of his other poetry that he composed was after taking long walks in nature, you know. Think of The Road Not Taken, his most famous poem, or the poem Reluctance that we did. He starts off by saying, out through the fields and the woods, which is his usual style to take long walks out in nature. Now, the other interesting thing about this poem is he starts off by saying, I had for my winter evening walk no one at all with whom to talk, which kind of gives you the sense that maybe he often walked with a companion. And while he may have in this village town, we don't really know, it wasn't usual for him to do so. He was almost always alone. So in reality, what he's probably doing starting the poem off this way is just providing a context. He's saying, I don't have anyone walking with me with whom to talk. However, this is all the other stuff I have. And then he goes through a list of all these other, you know, beautiful things that are striking him as he's walking down the lonely village street, you know. He has the cottages in a row that are all up to their shining eyes in snow. You know, the lights from the fires and the lamps within are sending out a beautiful mellow glow out onto the street that he's walking by. And he hears the sound of a violin, and he sees children running around and playing, you know, youthful forms and youthful faces. And he says, I had such company outward bound that he went to the very end of the row. He didn't want to stop. So he just walked the full length of the street, and we don't know how long that is, but it was probably fairly long because it says that it was 10 o'clock at night by the time he finally got to the end. And that's the part of the poem that throws people a little bit, the last stanza, because he kind of uses old-fashioned vernacular that we don't usually use in modern language too much anymore. But he says, over the snow my creaking feet disturbed the slumbering village street, like profanation, by your leave, at 10 o'clock of a winter eve. Now the word profanation, you know, comes from the word profane, that's the root, and that's where we get words like profanity from. So when he's saying that his creaking feet are disturbing the slumbering street, he's saying it's almost like profanity, like if you were to shout out a swear word, like it's just out of place, it doesn't belong. So he's saying he turned around and now all the cottage windows are black because it's 10 o'clock on a winter's eve, and he's saying, coming back and disturbing such a peaceful, beautiful scene, it feels like every step he's taking is like he's shouting out a swear word, which is an interesting way of, you know, describing it. It's probably a little bit of an exaggeration. He's probably overstating that a little bit, but that's just how, you know, how he felt at the time. And it was 10 o'clock on a winter's eve, high time to get back into a warm bed, and so obviously he walked home, and that's the end of the poem. But I hope you like this one. You know, it's just such another good example of how Robert Frost could just take an average, ordinary walk down a street and make it magical. You know, he did such a good job of that, just taking long walks and describing the things he saw and how he felt, you know, and the truths that it revealed to him about himself and about life. And, you know, his poetry, just taking simple walks, is some of the most famous poetry now in the entire English language. So I encourage you to read this one again. It's just a nice, you know, beautiful winter poem, and we'll be doing some more winter poems if it keeps snowing like this, so I look forward to seeing you then.